Guys, Jacqueline Fernandez here at the Alert Center. We do have some breaking news that we want to tell you about. In fact, we are going to wait a little bit. They are slated to talk at 12:45, so my computer says 12:42, give or take right now. But we're chatting about the Secretaries of State meeting up to discuss election security. So this is something the Nebraska Secretary of State's office will discuss. They're discussing preparations, of course, ahead of the November 5th general election. So that, believe it or not, right around the corner as we gear up for this election season. And so this is something that I'm sure is top of your mind. It's top of my mind. You know, what security procedures are in place, what security procedures will be in place. You know, what can we expect as a member of the voting public? So just a few questions that we have there. So I'm going to kind of take you through what we can expect as we wait for this webinar to start. I do have this up via a Zoom meeting. According to this webinar, it says it should start in about 11 minutes, give or take. So bear with me as I kind of continue to go through this story for you. So I do want to let you know we do have this story available for you on our website. We just got that up there just in the nick of time, so good news there for this breaking news story that we have for you. So here it is right here. Federal and state officials meeting today to discuss election security ahead of the November 5th election. So we do have...
Dear freedom, here's to more miles driven, more dollars saved.
I'm going to mute this real quick for you. Sorry about that. So yeah, so we will have this live stream available in our apps and our Facebook and YouTube pages if you have not clicked on that already. And this kind of gives you a detail of what this developing story will be about. So I do want to let you know the news conference will coincide with a visit from Jen Easterly, the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agent, who will be hosted by the National Counterterrorism Innovation Technology and Education Center. Kind of make this a little bit more interesting for you as we're going on here. What we can expect as we wait. Got to keep muting myself on this thing over here. All right. So we have two people who are going to join us. This is at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. This is at their Scott campus. So again, this is taking place at 12:45. My clock says 12:44. Let's kind of head over to that Zoom. Okay, it says they're going to start in about 10 minutes. So again, I am keeping track of that to make sure that everything is flowing smoothly on our end. So thankfully we do have that streaming option that is available for us, and we will be live streaming that to you as soon as that presentation does begin. Again, we're waiting for 12:45 to talk a little bit about election security. So what are the preparations ahead of the general election on November 5th? What are some concerns, right? I mean, what are people hoping to learn out of this? You know, it seems that Nebraska, just judging from this Secretary of State email that we did receive into our newsroom here, that we're prepared ahead of time. So that's a good place to be in. So again, this is happening at 12:45. We're just kind of waiting here on this webinar to get started. Featured speakers, so I can go through this list for you. Nebraska Secretary of State Bob Evnen, Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab, Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, South Dakota Secretary of State Monet Johnson, CISA Director Jen Easterly, which I told you about earlier. This is the Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and NCITE Director Gina Legion, NCITE, National Counterterrorism Innovation Technology and Education Center. So I want to make sure that we get those right. So again, this is something that the state of Nebraska is being proactive on instead of reactive, so that's always good news there when you want to make sure that we're ahead of the game. So let's see here. I do have our web story over my shoulder. I'm going to take this full screen. I'll give you a little better idea here as to what this breaking news story will be about. Let's head back to our homepage for you real quick. So yeah, if you're just joining us, this is the story that we're discussing. It's the top story on our website. That is WOWT.com. So for more information on this story and several others, you can always head there as well. Take a quick look at this Zoom link. All right, it appears we have about 9 more minutes for this Zoom link, so bear with me here as we kind of go through what we'll be discussing. Now I do want to say, I think this is interesting. We do have an alert banner for 6 First Alert Weather Days coming up early next week. This is in that teal banner at the top of our homepage. So I'm just going to click there real quick and kind of let you know what we have in store. So we do have these widespread frost and freeze alerts for early next week. So this is expected at this point Monday and Tuesday morning. So that'll be October 14th and October 15th. Those are both now 6 First Alert Weather Days. So Monday, 35 degrees is what they're anticipating, and then Tuesday 31 degrees. So we start with frost on Monday, and then we go from the widespread freeze to frost on Tuesday. So as you can see in this graphic, we can expect cold morning lows next week, widespread frost by Monday morning, freeze more likely on Tuesday morning, and the underground lines will be fine, we're told. This was last updated by Chief Meteorologist Emily Roller. And she's recommending harvest your gardens this weekend. It might be the last time to be able to do that. Give me 1 second here, excuse me. All right, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we're just going over this First Alert Weather Days. You can see the graphic right here. Exposed pipes may be at risk, but underground lines should be okay, as we just mentioned. Now, this is about on track for a first frost for the Omaha Metro. So average first frost, first 36-degree temperature in the fall. So yeah, we can just take a look at, the dates here and when our average first frost is anticipated, then the average first freeze. So this is that alert for you that you saw on our homepage. So I'm going to head back to our homepage now. This is that alert, 6 First Alert Weather Days, widespread frost and freeze for early next week. Now I'm just chatting about the weather as we anticipate this webinar to start. As you can see here, should start in about 7 or 8 minutes, give or take. And the story that we're discussing, if you're just joining us now, is Secretaries of State are discussing election security. So this is something that's definitely top of mind, right? We want to make sure that everyone's prepared ahead of time for the November 5th general election. There's going to be a few featured speakers for this. Jen Easterly, the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, she's going to be there. She'll be hosted by the National Counterterrorism Innovation, Technology, and Education Center at the University of Nebraska. And this is taking place at the University of Nebraska at Omaha at their Scott campus. So again, you're taking a look at our website. Here's that story for you right here. You can always head there for more information, WOWT.com. And we do have a bunch of election stories laid out for you already. So if we head to this news tab right here, this kind of takes you through our latest stories, what we're working on. All right, so scroll back up for you. Okay, and then we do have these different blips for crime and public safety, so you can go there for that. Education. And again, most of our election stories do have this election 2024 banner right here in the video, as well as in our web story too. So if the election is something that you're looking for, there's always a way to do that. Okay, perfect. So we hit the news, and if you head to this 3-tier drop down right here on the left, we can head to politics. We'll head there for you. Wonderful, thank you, Gina, helping me with this as I go along here. Thanks, Gina. So yeah, so here we have the politics here. So we do have this explainer, which is great, right? What you should know about the 6 bond issues on Omaha's November ballot. Again, important to get out there and vote. Familiarize yourself with what is on the November ballot. And we did have this debate, the Bacon-Vargas debate. The first debate was hosted by our Brian Mastery, and we do have the election 2024 second debate. Iowa Secretary of State launching initiative to help veterans vote. Faith leaders taking a stance in against abortion ban. So yeah, Iowa, Nebraska, this was a big one. The widespread fraud on medical marijuana petitions, that was a big one that we were covering a lot of. So I'll head up here, let's check in on our webinar. Okay guys, we've got about 5 more minutes, give or take. So let me head back to our homepage for you real quick. Again, this is WOWT.com. And this is the story that we're working on right now. We are waiting a little bit longer than planned. This news conference was set to take place at 12:45. It's at the University of Nebraska at Omaha Scott campus. And we're just waiting for that streaming link to click over, and then I can take you there. But if you are just joining us now, I'll leave our homepage up for you. But we are chatting a little bit about preparedness for the general election. That's on November 5th. Secretaries of State are set to discuss election security. So how prepared are we here locally? What are some of the things that officials are doing to make sure that we are safe, especially for voters, right? I mean, just coming in and out of those election booths, and for the volunteers, people who sign up in our community to be there and really help with volunteering. So that is of major interest. So we have a few featured speakers to take note of. Nebraska Secretary of State Bob Evnen, Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab, Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, South Dakota Secretary of State Monet Johnson, CISA Director Jen Easterly, and NCITE Director Gina Legion. So this is a consortium of all these people, several Secretaries of State, talking about our preparedness, how safe we're going to be come Election Day, and again, Election Day just right around the corner on the 5th, right? So over my shoulder, you can see here, this is our homepage, and this is the top story at this point on our homepage. U.S. state officials discussing election security. I'm going to head back over to that webinar so you can kind of see this is what we're waiting for right here. Okay, so got another 5 minutes, so bear with me here. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about politics and the latest from our website, again, WOWT, you can click on this 3-tier right here, head to politics, and this will bring you all the stories that we've been working on. Okay, we have this explainer. I like this one. Let's click on this one for you. Make sure we're still muted here, excuse me. Yes, our Johan Marin worked on this story. Here's this document. You can take a look at the Douglas County 2024 sample ballot. Here we go. So this is really helpful just to kind of give you an idea of, you know, what this will look like if you're voting at home this year, if you are planning to head out and exercise your right to vote. So here we are, the presidential ticket. This is a big one, right? Douglas County Clerk, Douglas County Commissioner. Yeah, so we have District 1 in here. Senate, Congress, state. Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen all the signs, right? So these names should start to look familiar as we get deeper into October and head into November. Again, so just looking at the sample ballots here. But today we're waiting for this webinar to start with Secretaries of State discussing election security. So maybe you've already filled out your ballot. Good for you. You've done your homework. You're ready. You're ready to turn that in. We're talking about preparations ahead of the November 5th general election. So I'm going to head back over here. Give me 1 second, guys. Excuse me. All right, guys, I'm back. So you're taking a look at the sample ballot for the Douglas County Election Commission. Election information up here. Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th. Are you ready? We hope so. Polls are open from 8 to 8. For information on your polling place, 402-444-VOTE, or that's 8683. And you can always go to votedouglascounty.com. So here we go. They have all the information here. Let's look at election deadlines. Gosh, October already. Can you believe it? So it's October 9th today. So yeah, Monday, the first day to vote early in person at Election Commissioner's office. And then we have some deadlines coming up for mailed voter registrations postmarked. Yeah, so as we gear up, here it is, Tuesday, November 5th, statewide general election day. Again, polls open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. All right, now I will say if you are just joining us, thanks for sticking with me here at the Alert Center, but we're waiting for this webinar to start on Secretaries of State to discuss election security. So preparations ahead of the November 5th election. What is that looking like? I mean, what does that look like for the volunteers out there that are volunteering at the polls? What does it look like for the people who are coming in to vote? What does that look like for the people who perhaps have already voted at home and are going to drop off their ballots on election day if they haven't dropped their ballots off already? So just kind of giving us a better idea of what we can expect for the general election on November 5th. So I'm taking a look at this webinar. So we've got about 3.5 minutes, give or take, before this webinar is slated to begin. So I am going to head back to, let's see, I'm going to type in our website here real quick. There we go. I'm going to head back there for you so you can kind of take a look. Yeah, so this is our homepage. You can always go there, as I mentioned, for more stories, including this one we're discussing. It's WOWT.com. I'm going to put this banner up for you. So the Secretaries of State discuss election security at 12:45. Clearly, it is no longer 12:45. So we're just kind of waiting a few minutes here when we can jump right into that Zoom meeting to talk a little bit about, you know, what we can expect, what preparations are taking place ahead of the November 5th general election. Some featured speakers: Nebraska Secretary of State Bob Evnen, Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab. Again, this is our top story right here we're discussing. Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, South Dakota Secretary of State Monet Johnson, CISA Director Jen Easterly, and CITE Director Gina Legion. So this is going to be happening in a few minutes now, but you know, I mean, just some questions to maybe ask yourself. I mean, do you feel ready for the election? Do you think this is going to be a safe process if you are maybe headed home and headed to your polling place to kind of, you know, make sure that you feel safe and secure getting out to vote in person if that's the route that you've chosen? Again, you have from 8 a.m. in the morning till 8 a.m. at night on November 5th for Election Day to get in there and exercise your right to vote. So this is something that we're taking a look at, and hopefully some of the questions that will be answered for you with this webinar that's about to start. So you'll see over my shoulder I do have our homepage here. Let's check in at this webinar. Okay, so the countdown continues. If you're just joining me right now, we're waiting for this webinar to start in about a minute and a half now, give or take. Again, we do have this story for you available on our website. We're just waiting for this webinar to get kicked off here. Several featured speakers for today's Secretaries of State, all meeting up. They're meeting up to discuss election security. So what preparations are underway, what preparations will begin, safety, top priority, especially for volunteers out there at the polling places, voters who are headed out perhaps to the polling place to exercise your right to vote. Perhaps you've already voted, right? Perhaps you have an absentee ballot and you've already kind of clicked here and there and you know what is in store for you, so good for you. I will just say, as we're waiting here for another couple minutes, we head to this drop-down banner and head to politics. We can always bring you the latest politics here. This is the good one that I like, the explainer for the bond issues, right? There are a bunch of them on the November ballot. I think there's about 6, so. Yeah, so this kind of gives you an inside scoop into politics for Nebraska and Iowa. I'll kind of head up here. And just to show you, I did like, there's this explainer. And then if you scroll down here, this gives you an idea of the Douglas County 2024 sample ballot. So yeah, believe it or not, Tuesday, November 5th, right around the corner, right? So polls open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Presidential ticket right here. Here we go. So you kind of head down for Douglas County, etc. Okay, I'm told this webinar has just started, so it says it'll start in about 30 seconds. Let's join in here and see if I can get you some audio. Trying to launch this meeting for you here. Here we go. It looks like they've started. Take this full screen and we'll get going.
It is my great pleasure to introduce the Director of Insight, Dr. Gina Ligon, who very graciously hosted us this morning, so thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Gina Ligon. I'm a professor here at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I am the director of the National Counterterrorism Innovation, Technology, and Education Center, which is the Department of Homeland Security Center of Excellence for Terrorism Prevention and Counterterrorism Research. So we are the federal designated center of excellence for this kind of academic work that supports keeping our elections safe and keeping us safe from all kinds of non-state or extremist threats to the United States critical infrastructure. We're here in the middle of the country, and so we wanted to convene Secretaries of State, Director Easterly here because we see our role as part of a team sport, collective defense, and making sure that all of us, our students here at the University of Nebraska, the researchers across our consortium with 38 partner universities, are all doing research on not only what threats we have seen in the past, but what are the emerging threats that we haven't seen yet that could materialize. And so this morning I got to share some of that research with the secretaries to talk to them about the active research projects that we have going on at Insight about terrorist use of emerging technology, threats to election workers, American susceptibility to conspiracy theories, and ways to be able to assure the ballot process is counted through risk limiting audits. We have a wide portfolio, all looking at ways to keep our elections safe. And it's been an honor to host these state and federal partners here. And we had industry partners here last night to learn about how we can all be part of this team sport that is election security. So thank you so much for being here. And I will turn it over to Erin to be able to manage questions, or Jackie, sorry.
Start with questions in the room. If anyone has any, just please remember to state your name and your news outlet. And I should have said this off the top, but we do have a hard drop of 1:30. So.
Chris Rebecca, I'm a reporter with the Omaha World. So like did a story on early voting in person starting Monday, talked to a young guy, among many other voters who said he seemed a little skeptical of the process, even though he wanted to make sure he voted, didn't get busy and blow it off on election day. And he just said, I want to be sure that now that I put my ballot in, it's going to get counted right and not going to be any funny business. What would you say to a guy like that? This is yours if you want. It's your
That seems to be a Nebraska question. Get involved in the process. Go be a poll worker. Go be an election observer. Find out how you get to do those things, and go watch this process happen and see what you think, and draw your own conclusions about it. We test every ballot counting machine in the state 3 times before every statewide primary and general election when we're testing these machines for accuracy. Post-election, after this election, we will select 10% of our precincts and hand count 3 races. The precincts will be selected randomly, although there'll be at least 1 precinct in every county. Some counties in Nebraska have only 1 precinct. For those that have more than 1, they'll be randomly selected. We will announce the precincts after the polls close. We will announce the races that will be counted after the polls close. And then throughout the state, there'll be these 3 races, and those 10% of precincts are going to be hand counted. And they'll be hand counted publicly. That is, there'll be observers. There'll be observers from both parties. And then the hand count will be compared to the machine count. Let's see how that turns out. When we did that in 2022, We across the state hand counted more than 48,000 ballots, and we found discrepancies in 11. That's a discrepancy rate of 23 thousandths of 1%. And what we found was that 5 of those 11 were, the machine couldn't read them because the voter marked the ballot too lightly. Now, every single ballot that's handed to a voter in the state of Nebraska bears the following instruction: darken the oval completely. And 48,000 of their friends and neighbors were able to follow that instruction, but these 5 people were not. And the question is, why not? What happened there? And the best working theory that I've come up with is that they wanted to vote for this guy, but not very bad. So you have to darken the oval completely. So we're going to do that again. We'll do that after every statewide primary and general election. We'll do it after the general election on November 5th. Those are the ways that your young voter can gain some assurance that these elections are fair, secure, and accurate. Now, there was one other thing that I left out about how we take care of these things. And if I think of it, I'll break into whoever's answering their question. We'll keep going.
All right, I think we have another question.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Beck with the Associated Press. I think I would direct this to Secretary of State Evans, since I'm in your state. Why did you find it necessary this year to have this type of summit, informing people that elections are safe and fair?
Well, why do we have this summit? Why did we say we wanted this summit this year? Well, why not? Election security is not static. Election security is not a one and done deal. Election security is dynamic. The challenges to elections are dynamic. And if you're going to continue to address these dynamic challenges to elections, then you do so in a dynamic fashion. It seemed wise and appropriate this year to convene this summit, and I expect we'll be doing this again in the future as well.
I think we have a question in the back.
Hi, I'm John Grinwald with 1011 News in Lincoln. If a candidate refuses to concede an election, say in 2020, and leaves it up in the air whether he would in this election, does that factor at all into your concerns over election security and integrity?
We're not here to serve candidates. We're here to serve the people of this country. Candidates and issues will run their elections how they want to. We're here to administer election and can, as Americans, over. So if you are worried about how a candidate or multiple candidates or whatever act, that's not for us to get involved with. And the better party also got ballot access. I want to add them. I am the Secretary of State of Missouri for all Missourians. And I think that I and my colleagues look at ourselves when we do a good, nobody notices. We are the linesmen in the football game that no one notices. We call it as it is. We provide for the administration of the election, but the decisions are made by the people. And if they like what a candidate does, they can vote for him. If they don't like it, they can vote against him. In my official capacity, that's none of my business. My business is to make sure that you're illegal. If you're a legally registered voter in my state, you have accessibility to vote, the security in the election so you can know that your vote will count and not be discounted by illegal occurrences, and that there can be credibility. So whether you win or lose, when all is said and done, you can know that what was done appropriately. That's what we focus on. We'll let the candidates speak for themselves.
I just add one thing, just from a national level, just to your point on the security. of election infrastructure, I do think it's important to note the massive progress that's been made over the past couple years by election officials across the nation so that the results, once they are official and certified, why Americans can trust them. If you look at the fact that over 97% of registered voters will cast their ballots in jurisdictions where there is a paper record that can be verified by that voter, that can be used to count and recount and ensure accuracy if there is a very close margin of error, that's hugely important. It's important for the American people to know that the machines that they use to cast their ballots are not connected to the internet. So very, very hard for malicious cyber actors to be able to get into those systems, nearly impossible. And then also important to know that election officials have developed multiple defense in depth layers, technological, physical, procedural, to protect that election infrastructure from being messed with or tampered with, including pre-election logic and accuracy testing, enhanced cybersecurity protections, physical access controls, and post-election auditing. So those are the reasons why I have so much confidence that the vote will be accurate once it is certified.
I'm Brian Beach with Nebraska Public Media, and I know a concern some voters have is why it takes so long for these results to come in, or even just at the presidential level, that it could take up to a week, knowing that, I guess in India, they counted up 640 million votes in a single day. I guess, can you speak to sort of why this process in the US maybe takes a little bit longer than in some other countries?
We'll take a survey of how long it takes in each state. Because you've got several states represented here. Unofficial election results are usually available in the state of Nebraska, across the state in virtually all races, election night. But there are provisional ballots that have to be reconciled for a week, for the week following the election. And then the election is certified shortly after that. So we're doing pretty well. And I can't speak to India. Don't know about the situation in India, but we have our unofficial results on election night. In virtually every election, I anticipate that we'll have that this year as well.
I agree with what Robert just shared with you. Most of us do have on election night the unofficial results, but we are seeing such a polarization in our election process right now. We have many more races now that are so close that until we have a chance to do the checks and balances that you want us to do, we're not in a race to give you the official one. So if it takes us a week, then it's better to give you the accurate number than to jump ahead. And I had a congressional race a few years ago in Iowa that 6 votes determined the winner. So I guarantee you, we were counting those a couple times just to make sure we had the right winner when we got done at the end of the day. So we want to make sure that happens. And with human error and things along those lines, we really do have to do those extra checks. So be patient. And I tell the media this, I tell the public this. I said, we want to give you accurate results. It's not a race to get it out at 10 o'clock because the polls close at 8. So we need a little more time. We're going to take it to make sure we get it right. Thank you.
Some other things to keep in mind, in my almost 8 years as Secretary of State, I can't remember a race changing from the unofficial results to the official results after the certification process, unless it was like a 5-vote margin at the time. So I think everyone here, we're getting unofficial results out. You probably know 99% of the races by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Which is great. And I thank our poll workers that help us do that. We do have to remember something. There are young men and women across this globe that are defending our freedoms. They don't have great mail service. We have to make sure that their ballots count. So under federal law and state law pursuant to that, there are a handful, generally speaking, sometimes more depending on your jurisdiction, of overseas military voters that have to postmark, have to have that sent before the election. But there are a handful of ballots that we can sometimes get by Friday at noon after the election. And I believe in getting quick results out. My colleagues do. but we all believe in getting it right. And we believe in making sure that every American, no matter where Uncle Sam has sent them, has the right to participate in our elections. But I would just say that with this cross-section of election administrators, unless it's a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 10-vote difference, the results are known of the election. And we get those results out.
I would just say in South Dakota, we had one county that needed to hand count all of the ballots. So that took about till 2 a.m. for a primary. We have just under 600,000 voters in South Dakota, so a small amount. So we're looking for a lot more people to participate in the general election, but our election night reporting is pretty darn accurate, but we have on there unofficial results. So we know you guys want the results and we try to get them out there as soon as we can. Thank you.
Question for Gina, Alex McLoone with KETV. I'm wondering if you can talk more about the threats that have been researched here, and can you talk at all about the threats seen yet that could materialize?
Yeah, so we have 4 projects, and some of them are conducting here at University of Nebraska Omaha, but as the National Counterterrorism Research Center, we actually 38 universities across the country who are also doing this work. And so just to highlight a few that we're concerned about, and some of those are threats to election workers themselves. You know, we only have access to federal trends and federal case law around this, and so that's a really high bar. So we think we're actually only seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to that increase in the physical violence to election workers, election administrators, particularly in contentious states, swing states that we have been researching. So Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia have seen the largest spikes in our data set. I'm really concerned because we have another project led by University of Arkansas where they're doing interviews, victim experiences with election workers. And a lot of these individuals, particularly women, don't report. They don't report when they have these threats of violence happening to them. And so as much as people say this is nothing new, we've experienced this for a long time, our data just doesn't support that. I think that what's happening is that people either don't know what's a First Amendment protected right and just being angry, and what's a threat of violence, which is actually a federal crime. And so we are really trying to do research to help mitigate that, to protect the protectors is what we call it. We do see election workers as part of our protection and critical infrastructure. And so I'm just really concerned about those threats escalating and making folks feel unsafe doing their job to keep our democracy safe. Thanks. Sure. Yeah, so we are just starting the project in Nebraska. So we've so far only interviewed the states that I mentioned, because again, we're looking at federal charges. We actually don't have federal charges here in Nebraska, so that's a hopeful sign that this is not as contentious of an area. I'd like to think as a Nebraskan that people are very civil here, and I think the more we can keep that kind of discourse and requisite out of the media to be able to keep it as much of about issues as opposed to people, the safer our election workers will be in the state, particularly in the 2nd district. Thanks, Alex.
1011 News, John Grinvalds with 1011 News again. This is a hyper-focused Nebraska question, so sorry to all the other secretaries of state. But Secretary Bob Evans, could you answer? We got this question from a viewer. It has to do with the amended cross-claim in a lawsuit. They were asking about election integrity, where in that amended cross-claim, you called into question up to about 100,000 signatures on the ballot measures, Nebraskans for medical marijuana, those 2 ballot measures. One person was asking us, they called in asking, does that mean that these county election commissioners weren't doing their jobs, that they didn't catch all these potentially tainted signatures? If they make those mistakes, what kind of other mistakes could they make? So I'm wondering if you could shed some light on that.
Thank you, John. I believe that the Attorney General in his briefing has indicated that there are up to something like 49,000 signatures that are called into question, but not because the signatures weren't properly matched by our county election officials. Our county election officials across the state did an outstanding job of processing all of the petitions. They qualified, had to review something on the order of 600,000 signatures over the course of a 40-day period of time. And they did an outstanding job, and they were very accurate and complete in what they did. What's called into question here is whether or not they were properly notarized, whether the notaries had the signature collector in front of them when they notarized the petition form, which is a requirement of notarization, or whether the notary had engaged in, whether the signature collector had engaged in some fraudulent acts. Signatures are not apparent on the face of the petitions themselves. And so we'll let that proceed. Normally, I wouldn't comment on litigation, but I thought I would respond to that question just to bring some clarity there.
We have a question for Director Easterly. This is from Dale Denwalt with the Oklahoman. Has CISA noticed specific threats or discussion by terror actors against the 2024 elections?
So at this time, we have not seen specific threats from terrorists to elections. That said, as I think folks know, in Oklahoma yesterday, the FBI disrupted a apparently look at it really the first indication that we've seen the potential for a terrorist threat to elections or around a Federal Bureau of Investigation, the full range of threats, whether that's a cyber threat, a physical threat, threats of foreign malign influence and disinformation, and certainly threats from terrorist entities. I think it just tens of thousands of polling places, hundreds of thousands of election workers, probably some 150 million people who were voting. And so there could be a full range of threats. That's physical security assessments, providing de-escalation training, providing anti-active shooter training, to make sure that election officials are prepared for the full range of threats. All that said, I think that disruption that happened yesterday is an isolated case. Of course, if there are other things that we are seeing from the terrorist landscape, we will ensure that election officials are apprised of that.
Another question from Jillian Barnes from the New York Times, and we only have 5 minutes left, so this might be the last question. Is there any assessment that Nebraska is at any special risk of foreign influence operations, given their district by district electoral vote distribution?
So first off, and certainly I can turn it over to Secretary. But we have not seen that you just brought up about the sort of split electoral votes. What I will say, though, is we've seen very clear indication that foreign adversaries remain persistent threat in aiming to do two things. First, undermine could happen here, just given that electoral vote situation. All that said, we've not seen anything that specifically calls out Nebraska, and to the Secretary Wayne Benna and our team to ensure that they're able to take advantage of all of the no-cost free resources that we have. And it's really been a fabulous and exemplary for all. I just say one last thing. From a national official election results that don't come out for a couple days, certainly in some states it could be very, very close, and that will require counting and recounting in a couple of days. And that's why it's important for the American people to remain patient and for the media to make sure that if there are any questions out there about what's happening on the ground, that you go to those authoritative subject matter experts, that you go to the state and local elections between November 5th and frankly, up until January 20th. We have to remember that there are various milestones that require certification and validation. And in the space of uncertainty or ambiguity or challenges, our foreign adversaries are going to create a wedge, attempting to shred our institutions, attempting to sow discord. And that's why it's up to all of us as Americans, as the Secretary said, we the people, these elections are for us. It's up to all of us to do our part in protecting and preserving our democracy.
Did anyone want to close with on the second question between the post-vote pre-certification time? What are states planning to do to push back against influence operations during that time?
If there are, we'll just tell the truth. I mean, we are all committed to letting as much transparency into our elections to the point of allowing you, we will not allow you to see how an individual voted. But I think our job, if there is a portion of our job to fight disinformation, it is to tell the truth, to put out information, to be transparent, to let people know that if they have questions, we're there. We're not going to talk about candidates. We're going to talk about the process. We're going to talk about the votes. We're going to talk about the certification process. And as always, we will invite the people of this country and of our jurisdictions to come and see and taste and see that the elections are well run.
All right, it is 1:30, so we will conclude with that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you, secretaries and directors, for being here.
Thank you.